Thanks so much, Richard, and good morning, everyone. We are living in a time of absolutely massive changes to our society. We've got rapidly advancing technological capabilities, we have geopolitics and a lot of things happening in the way that countries interoperate with each other. We've got a growing population, we've got climate change. All this put together is going to radically change our world over the next 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. So today I'm going to focus on technologies. And what's really surprising is the disconnect that there is between how fast technology is changing and people's perception of what it's going to mean to their jobs and to their livelihood. About 5 weeks ago, Randstad, which is an HR recruitment company, did a study, and they found that of all the employees they talked to across Australia, 84% of the people that they spoke with thought that automation would not impact their job. In the US, Pew Research did a study about a year ago, and they asked similar questions, and they found that 80% of US workers, a big poll, thought that their job would remain either the same or essentially unchanged for the next 50 years. You heard right, 50 years. Yet that same population that they interviewed thought that 2/3 of people would have their job impacted by automation. So obviously they thought it would happen, just not to them. The reality is that automation and the acceleration of technology is already impacting jobs. A few months ago, a company in Japan laid off 34 insurance adjusters because they brought in an AI to do their work. A few weeks ago, the World Economic Forum released a study that showed over the coming few years, by 2020, that there would be a loss of 5 million jobs over 15 developed countries, including us. In a report done about 2 years ago, CETA took a look at the job workforce in Australia, and they found that within 10 to 15 years, that up to 5 million jobs might be lost. That's 40% of today's jobs might be either lost or change radically. So why do we have this really big disconnect between what people think is going to happen and what is likely to happen? And I believe it has to do with the pace of technology change. If I think back to 1967, 50 years ago, nobody had computers. Only the biggest companies had mainframes. People did not type in their job. There were specialized typing pools. We had milkmen going around and delivering milk to our front door. In 1967, of the graduating class of one of the universities in the US, 51% of the women listed as their occupation after graduation homemaker. And in that very same year, 1967, it finally became legal for people to marry someone in another race. Today, we just find that absolutely mind-blowing that it ever wasn't illegal. So let's talk about robots and jobs. Automation is going to happen, and when I talk about robots, I'm not talking just about hardware robots, I'm talking about software robots, artificial intelligence as well. When we look at jobs, there are a number of criteria that we need to consider as to whether something will be automated. The first is it technically feasible either today or in the very near future? The second thing is, what is the cost of automation? If it's humongous, then maybe it's a no-goer, even if it can be done. The third and fourth are intertwined, and that is the scarcity of labor and cost of labor. So if you can't actually find people to fill a job, then that could be a really good candidate to automate a particular task. However, if labor is scarce and cheap, automation may not make sense at all. But it's more than just a cost equation about what's cheaper, the robot, or the software or the people. You've got to look at also what additional productivity automation might have and what are the other gains. So if I look at industries like agriculture where they have robots that are lined with lots of different sensors, there is a real gain there to using a robot to be able to do crop maintenance, for example, because with the sensors, you can count the number of flower buds and estimate the yield. You can look at moisture levels. You can pick up pests. You can look at anything that sensors can measure. So there's a real productivity gain. You also have to look at regulatory issues. For example, when it comes to things like driverless cars or drones, there may be regulatory inhibitors to doing something. And then there's social acceptance. And if people don't accept robots in their workplace or working alongside of them, you could have real issues. And here, I'll just give you an example from science fiction. Anybody here a sci-fi geek by chance? Oh, a couple, yay, you're dear to my heart. Isaac Asimov, one of the science fiction writers that I grew up reading, was one of the pioneers in talking about robots and people. And in fact, in his books, in particular the Foundation series and the Robot series, you saw everything from robot bashing, where robots were taking jobs on planet Earth 1,000 years from now, to people who actually married robots. So you get that full spectrum. So the reality is that robots are coming in a big way. And one of the first places you're likely to see a robot and not recognize it is with driverless vehicles. So by now you've all heard of driverless cars. And in fact, when I was at the Consumer Electronics Show, I looked at every single car manufacturer out there, and all of them had been talking about hundreds of millions or even up to $1 billion or more worth of investment in automation and driverless vehicles, as well as electric vehicles. But it's going well beyond just having a car that's able to go on autopilot mode. This is a picture of Mercedes' Vision van, and it's actually a robotics system. This is where things are going in the future. It's a prototype. In this van, which can operate in autonomous mode, it has a robotic cargo loader that slides in and out. On top of the van, it has drones, which are able to take packages from this robotic cargo loader and deliver them to destinations. You still have room for a driver, and there's a joystick in there for the driver to drive the car by joystick, just like they're gaming. And the driver might be taking out packages that are more fragile or heavier and something that the drone can't take. They're also investing in another version of this Vision van, which will have ground-based robots, little bots that wheel around, and they think of it like a mothership with this van parking in a neighborhood and different kinds of bots going out and doing deliveries. We're going to see lots of drones in all kinds of shapes and sizes, and a lot of them are going to have cameras. In fact, most of them will. They'll be used for everything from inspections for insurance disasters, if there's a flood or a bushfire, to real estate videography, to inspecting electrical grids and telecommunications hardware, to even an ambulance drone, which is this yellow one here. If someone has a heart attack and they're in this area in the Netherlands where the ambulance drone is there, you dial emergency service. The ambulance drone flies at over 100 kilometers an hour. It has onboard defibs, and when it lands, it hones in on your GPS signal, and somebody who's a medical professional will talk you through applying defibrillation to a person who's experienced a cardiac arrest. My favorite one is this bottom picture here, where you can see me next to it. It's actually a flying taxi. It's a prototype from a Chinese company called EHang. It's the EHang 184, and it's completely autonomous. You get in, you use an app, you tell it where you want to go, and it will fly you to the destination that you want to go to. Now, it's working, but it's still in prototype. Obviously, there are some regulatory hurdles. And by the way, you better keep your weight down because it carries a max of 220 pounds, So you don't want to be too heavy and get into this thing. But it's got a flight time of about 23 minutes. And there are a lot of other companies in the world that are looking at this too, including Uber. So in our lifetimes, in the very near future, we might actually see flying taxis. How cool is that? We will have drone highways in the sky. It's probably out 7, 10, 12 years from now. But already in the US, Amazon and NASA are starting to work on the framework for actually taking airspace in urban areas and segregating it for drones with different kinds of capabilities. So the higher level airspace, roughly between 200 and 400 feet, would be for fully autonomous drones that are capable of going at very fast speeds. Lower airspace would be relegated to drones that might be manually controlled or have less sensors and aren't communicating with the cloud. There will be a lot of jobs in this industry that you just cannot even imagine right now, including people who will design special packaging for drone deliveries. Robots are already being used in industry in a wide number of places. So going from the top left, this is actually a construction robot called SAM, Semi-Autonomous Mason. A normal bricklayer can lay between 300 and 400 bricks a day. Sam can do 1,200 bricks a day. And he still has a human feeding him the bricks, but he does a lot of it on his own. Then we have robots in warehouses. Amazon already has 47,000 robots in their warehouses. And in China, there's a restaurant that has robotic waitstaff. You walk in, you get greeted by a concierge robot. You have robot waitstaff bringing you food, and back in the kitchen are other robots. And there's a hardware store in San Jose that again has a robot concierge. And if you're like me and you don't know what kind of widget it is and you're hardly ever in a hardware store, you show it to the robot, it does a 3D scan, it gives you a screen, and you pick which one it is, and it wheels you right to the place that you want to go. There will be a lot of jobs about designing robots, servicing robots, maintaining robots, doing all kinds of things in respect of keeping this new asset category, this new fleet up and working, and of course, learning how to program it and change things in it as well. And the robots are coming. Let me tell you, it is an absolute fact. These pictures I took in January at the Consumer Electronics Show, and you'll notice a trend with a lot of these. They're designed to look sort of cute and harmless and anime-like. Two robots that I want to draw your attention to are on the right side, the top and bottom, Moorebot and Lynx. One thing that you should be aware of is that voice interfaces are becoming the de facto mode to talk to a lot of these robots. Both of those robots have Amazon Alexa integrated in with them, and you're actually talking to these bots, and they're, if you like, crude digital assistants. But what is also really, really interesting, and that I saw out in CES, was a lot of robots that are aimed at kids. The top middle picture, Lubot, is aimed at little kids from the age of 2 years old and up. It's a cute roly-poly toy, but it's connected to the net, and it has a voice interface. The kid asks it questions, and it answers back. This is going to have a tremendous impact on the workforce of the future because the littlies of today are going to grow up with robots, talking to robots, and it's going to be just like kids today will take to an iPhone or an iPad, and you'd think that they were born with glass attached to them in the umbilical cord. Their relationship with robots will be the same sort of thing that we're seeing with smartphones and smart technologies. It's going to have a massive impact on the workforce. And going out a little bit, let me show you an experiment that's being done. It's a working prototype. This is from Yale. They took a 3D scan of a human hand, and they designed a robot that is able to manipulate things as accurately as a human hand can. So that's a limitation of today's robots, is that they don't have that articulated grasp. Well, this robot does, and they're planning to go even further. They want to be able to grow tendons and skin on top of the robot. So an initial use will be in the area of prosthetics, but you can imagine that this is the first step to having humanoid robots. Robots that are actually like the androids that we might see in science fiction. And it's rapidly becoming science fact. And maybe 50 years from now, there'll be another constitutional amendment in the US where it's legal to marry a robot. We're going to see robot teachers. And I'm not talking about these guys teaching kids or teaching adults. Can you imagine this mech with the all this armament? Hey kid, what's the answer? You got it wrong. Ka-choom. No. I'm talking about people that teach robots how to do new tasks and how to interface with humans. There are going to be new categories of jobs of teachers, educators, who help robots through the use of AI techniques like deep learning, learn how to interface in the human world. So we can't really talk about robots without talking about artificial intelligence, because the two are lockstep. They go hand in hand. And there have been some incredible advances with AI. What you may not know is that work with AI started all the way back in 1956. Back then, the way that you worked with AI was you tried to program it with exactly the decision tree that an expert human would have, and it was quite rigid in the sorts of things that it could do, but it was fast. Today, the way that you work with artificial intelligence is with cognitive intelligence and deep learning, and you train the AI by feeding it information, tons and tons of information, databases that may be structured or unstructured, Word documents, spreadsheets, YouTube videos, social media feeds, email, all kinds of stuff goes into training the AI to be able to work in lots of different areas. In the workforce, I'm already seeing instantiations of AI. One is in the financial industry, fintech, where we're starting to see robo-advisors that are able to help clients by looking at all kinds of market data and making investment trades in real time based on what they're seeing. And if the projections are correct, a human advisor would have a trend line that looks something like this in terms of growing your wealth. A robo-advisor is scheduled or forecast to have a trend that looks like this. In the world of medicine, IBM Watson is being used in the field of oncology to sift through the thousands of clinical research reports that come out every single month, the thousands of conference proceedings, all kinds of medical experimental drugs, match it with patient histories, and help an oncologist to sift through what the best particular treatment is for a patient. There's a bankruptcy lawyer robot in the UK called Ross. And what the law firm there is doing is having the AI sift through the thousands of documents involved with bankruptcy and coming up with what the nit of the case is, and then handing that off to the lawyer. I was talking with some people in KPMG a few weeks ago at a function, and they're starting to bring in an AI robot to help with the interview process, actually doing some of the pre-screening. We're going to see a lot of AI in the training area. It hasn't really hit now, but where you're going to see it being really useful is, first of all, with personalization. People learn at different rates, They have different capabilities. There are modalities that some people will be better reading, some will be better visualizing things, others need to be able to do something. When you have an AI that's able to take content and repurpose it on the fly to individual needs and really hone in on where a person's strengths and weaknesses are, then you start to see a lot of benefit. There's also a lot of benefit with content. An AI can take your content and automatically start updating it through things that are happening in your company. You could have an AI that translates your content into different languages. But there are some potential downsides in terms of ethics. You really want to make sure that as your AI is learning, that you as the educators actually understand what it's doing. There'll be new jobs that come up that are related to teaching robots to behave more like humans, giving them the soft skills of what makes us people. And that's all about the heart space. In fact, there are AI companies that are hiring poets and philosophers and other people with liberal arts backgrounds to help them in training the AIs. So how smart can an AI get? Well, the answer is there is no upper limit. From an AI researcher perspective, at a conference in January this year, half of the participants thought that AIs could reach human levels by 2040, 2050. 90% thought that AIs could reach human levels by the year 2075. So what does that all mean for us and for you as educators? Well, number one, you want to look at the job roles in your company and perhaps be part of the team that's evaluating what should be automated and what could be automated so that you can understand how that impacts your training curricula. You want to make sure that you have the budget and the buy-in from your executive management to be able to invest in these new technologies, learn about them as educators, and incorporate them into your training programs. And most of all, you want to lobby in your company for retraining and reskilling people rather than turfing them, because frankly, as a society, if we end up with 40 to 50% unemployment due to automation, that's bad for everybody. We've got to look after people. Thank you very much. You want to do some Q&A? Okay.
Well, that was extremely insightful, wouldn't you agree, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much.
Extremely insightful. Now's an opportunity to ask any questions. I'm sure there's a couple in the crowd that we can throw out to. Who would like to go first?
Oh, everybody's shy.
Come on, it's only early. Well, whilst they're warming up, I've got one for you.
Okay.
So what is the one job, or maybe two jobs, that you can inform us that absolutely will not go to an AI?
Creativity. Right now, things in the creative space are not going to go to an AI because it's just not there yet. I cannot imagine an AI writing Game of Thrones, for example. When it comes to executive management, deciding what to invest in and what not to invest in, that's not going to go. But in any given job, I think some portion of maybe all of our jobs will have elements that can be automated. So what we want to do is think about what things are we doing that are repetitive and can be automated. And if it ends up being more than 50% of your job, you really need to look very carefully at what does this mean. And by the way, with repetitive, it's not just manual labor. So a lot of people think, oh, like it's just driverless cars or it's just blue collar jobs. But if I think about professions like accounting, a lot of the people in the accounting field who are very well educated, they do things that are very routine, like filing BIS forms. And that's something that can be really easily automated, Richard. They've got to lift their game, Or why would you pay some human to file your BAS if you're a small business owner and they're not adding value when you can use a program that the tax office has certified and said, yes, we know it works appropriately, you know, we're happy for you to use this, and if there's an issue, you know, you're not going to get huge fines, you know, we'll work through it with you. So we really, really need to look at that.
And one thing's for certain, what they found through Harvard recently is the people who are the happiest on the planet have the most meaningful and deepest relationships.
Yes, well, as I said, the heart space, you know,
How's
that
that going to
human
impact?
touch. Well, if I look at jobs that have a lot of social interaction, almost anything in the medical profession, you might have an AI that assists you, and that's actually something you want to look at, is how can an AI assist you do your job better?
Your own personal assistant.
Yeah, exactly. You
Who'd
know,
like that?
or like oncology, you know, if you have an AI that's helping you keep track of all these studies that are happening from all around the world, that's actually a good thing, because no human can read through all of that and do surgeries every day. There's not enough time in the day. And, you know, the list just goes on and on. I mean, I'd love to have an AI that helps me to do some things too that are, you know, rather drudgery, like all my finance type of stuff and sending out contracts. But we really do need to look at what this means for the workforce. And as educators, this means that there's actually a big role for all of you to help understand what this impact is. I mean, another job I wouldn't want to see automated is like my hairstylist, you know? I can't imagine going to a robot for that.
Me too.
You know, like there are a whole bunch of things that you really want a person. You want the empathy. Yes, there's a question here.
I'll repeat that. You want to repeat that?
Yeah. Okay, so the question was about emotional responses and, you know, are we actually going to be interacting with something that has some sort of emotion? And right now, the answer is no. You know, it'll have mock emotion, but there are two technologies that will help robots and AI to better understand the emotional mood of the person they're speaking with. The first is facial recognition, and already we can do emotion detection from the expressions on our face. The second is with voice recognition and recognizing from the tone of our words, the actual choice of our words, and the cadence of our words, what sort of emotional state we're in. So if you can imagine that you have a robot that has vision as well as the ability to respond in natural language, and it's been trained by one of my emotional trainers to actually take those inputs and respond accordingly, then the potential from a technological perspective is there to have AI and robots that are more emotionally aware of who they're interacting with. And that's something that a lot of the bigger AI companies are investing in right now. So it's on the horizon.
We've got another question out the back. Is Jackie Pooley here? Yeah, great, you're next.
Oh, hi, Jackie.
So we've got a bit of extra time to play with today, so you don't mind going a little bit over? Yeah. Okay, so gentleman at the back.
You mentioned to have a forum where people are really having dialogue about the future of these roles that will become automated. Are there appropriate forums for that right now? Because there's a lot of lip service to people saying that we should be having these conversations, but I still imagine, and this is just my personal view, is that we're going to see a very radical transformation in the next couple of years that's going to be devastating. It's really going to rip the divide between the very rich and the very poor and these micro communities that exist. And I'm just not sure if there's enough being done, to be honest, in my personal opinion, around that. Well, is there going to be a world wage? Are we going to look at these type of things?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not really a question, it's more a statement.
Yeah.
But are there any forums that you're aware of that are really dialoguing around this?
Yeah, you've raised so many fantastic points, and I won't repeat all of them here, but what I can say is across the board in a lot of companies that I talk to, and I get brought in to do seminars like this, but for internal teams as well, is that when they start to understand the impact of automation, they have a jaw drop impact, number one, and then number two, they start thinking about, well, what does this mean for our organization? And I think we're right now at the stage with almost every company where they're just starting to recognize that it might and will have an impact on their firm. But it's only a few companies right now that are at this stage where they're seriously thinking about it. And oftentimes after hearing presentations like this where suddenly, executive teams have their eyes open to what's coming and how fast it's coming, the fact that it's actually not science fiction, that, these technologies are not prototypes, they're actually being rolled out. And you are so right about this coming schism that we're in serious danger of having as a society. And it's one of the reasons I do what I do, because the more I can spread the message and make people aware of what will be happening and the fact that it's science fact, not science fiction, I think the better chance we have as a society to take steps within the next 3 years. Like the next 3 years are really super critical for us to take the right steps to put in place the assessments of different job roles and involve people in the role helping to look at what can be automated, start doing skills assessments of individuals for the things that they're good at and starting the retraining. Because if we don't start it now, by the time we hit 2020, this steep acceleration curve is going to be going like this, and there will be a lot of people who get caught out, and I don't want to see that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shara Evans.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.